I am 71 years old. I left my country, my friends, everything I knew, to live with my son in America. And for months, I smiled and said nothing, because I noticed something that broke my heart slowly, quietly, every single day. My daughter-in-law was a completely different person depending on one thing, whether my son was in the room or not. When he was there, warm, attentive. Kamala Auntie, let me get you some tea, touching my hand. Laughing at my stories, the perfect daughter-in-law. The moment he left for work, it was like someone turned off a light. No good morning, no eye contact. A polite smile that said everything except welcome. For months, I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself I was too old-fashioned, too sensitive, that this was just America, that people were different here. But deep down I knew. And one ordinary Saturday morning, everything I had been carrying in silence finally came out. And what happened in that hallway changed everything between us. This is not a story about a villain. It is not a story about a perfect ending either. It is the story of two women who had to learn to stop performing for the man they both loved and finally look each other in the eye. If you have ever felt invisible in someone else's home, this one is for you. I remember the day I landed in America like it was yesterday. I was 71 years old, carrying two big suitcases, a small bag full of spices I brought from home, and a heart full of hope. My name is Kamala. I am from a small city in India near Pune, and I had spent my whole life there. My husband passed away 3 years before that trip, and my son Arjun, my only child, had been asking me for years to come live with him in the United States. "Ma, you are alone there," he always said on our video calls. "Come here, we have space. You will be happy with us." I was not sure. I want to be honest with you about that. I was not sure at all. I had my neighborhood, my friends from the temple, the women I had known since I was a young bride. I had the smell of my own kitchen, the sound of the street outside my window every morning. Leaving all of that is not a small thing. When you are 71, leaving everything you know is one of the hardest things you can do. But Arjun kept asking, and I kept getting older. And one day I looked around my empty house and I thought, what am I staying for? So I packed my bags, I said goodbye to everyone. I cried at the airport, and I cried again on the plane. And then I dried my eyes because I told myself, you are going to your son. This is a good thing. Arjun was waiting for me at the airport with a big bouquet of flowers, marigolds and roses, because he knows I love them. He looked just like his father when he was young. Tall, thin, dark hair. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. And for a moment, everything felt right. His wife, Ashley, was standing a little behind him. I had met Ashley before, only on video calls. She was American, from a place called Ohio. She had blonde hair and blue eyes and a very nice smile. On the video calls, she always seemed friendly enough. She called me Kamala Auntie, which I thought was sweet. She would wave at me and ask how I was doing. She seemed kind. That day at the airport, she hugged me too. "Welcome, Kamala Auntie. We are so happy you are here," she said, and she smiled wide and helped me with one of my suitcases. I thought, okay, this is going to be fine. I want to tell you the truth, friend, so I'm going to be careful here. That first week, I really did think everything was going to be fine. Ashley showed me my room, which was nice and clean. She had put fresh flowers on the table beside the bed. She cooked a simple pasta dinner that first night, and she asked me what I liked to eat. Arjun sat between us at the table, happy and relaxed, talking and laughing and refilling everyone's water glass. It felt like a family. It felt good. But I am a woman who has lived a long life. 71 years teach you things that no school can teach you. And there was something, from the very beginning, that I could not explain but I could feel. A small coldness. Like when you walk into a room and the window is open just a little bit. You cannot see it, you cannot point to it, but you feel the cold air on your skin. When Arjun was home, Ashley was warm and attentive. She would bring me tea without me asking. She would sit with me in the living room and ask about India, about my life, about Arjun when he was a little boy. She laughed at my stories. She touched my hand sometimes. But when Arjun went to work, he worked long hours. He is an engineer. He left the house before 7 in the morning most days. Something changed. Not dramatically. Not in a way I could describe easily to someone. It was more like the temperature dropped a few degrees. Ashley would say good morning to me and then disappear into her home office, where she also worked from home. She would not offer me tea. She would not ask me how I slept. She would not look up from her laptop when I walked past. When I came to the kitchen to make my own breakfast, she would be there making her coffee, and she would give me a small, polite smile, the kind you give a stranger, not the kind you give family. And then she would go back to her phone. I told myself, she is busy. She is working. This is America. People work hard here. They are not like we are at home where you stop and sit and talk. I told myself not to be too sensitive. I told myself I was probably imagining things. But then one evening something happened that I could not explain away so easily. It was a Tuesday. Arjun had called to say he would be home late, maybe 9 o'clock. Ashley and I were alone in the house. I'd been sitting in the living room reading, and I thought I would go to the kitchen to make some chai. I always make chai in the evening. It is a habit I have had my whole life. It helps me feel calm. As I was heating the milk, I asked Ashley, who was sitting at the kitchen table on her laptop, if she would like some. She looked up at me, and for just a second, just 1 second, I saw something in her eyes that I had not seen before. Not anger, exactly. More like impatience. Like she was tired. Like I was interrupting something. Like my being there was an inconvenience she had learned to tolerate. Then the look was gone. She smiled at me. "No thank you, Kamala Auntie," she said. Polite, pleasant, normal. But I saw it. I know what I saw. I took my chai to my room, and I sat on the edge of my bed and I thought about my house in Pune. I thought about my kitchen there, and my friends, and the sound of the street. And I felt something I had not expected to feel. Something I did not want to feel, because I knew it was dangerous. I felt like I did not belong there. Now, I am not a woman who gives up easily. I raised a child alone after my husband got sick. I ran a small business for many years. I have dealt with difficult neighbors, difficult relatives, difficult times. I know that living together is hard. I know that when a woman has her own home and her own routines, and then a mother-in-law arrives with 2 suitcases and a bag of spices, there is an adjustment that needs to happen. I understood that. So I decided to be patient. To be patient and to watch. To give it time. To give Ashley the benefit of the doubt. But I also decided something else that night. I decided to pay attention. Really pay attention. Because something was telling me, that small cold feeling, that look in her eyes, that things were not quite what they appeared to be. And in my 71 years of life, I have learned one thing above everything else. When something is telling you to pay attention, you should pay attention. I finished my chai. I said my prayers. I went to sleep. And I waited to see what the next days would bring. The first month went by slowly. That is the only way I can describe it. When you are new somewhere, when everything around you is unfamiliar, the smells, the sounds, the food, the language on the television, the way people drive, the way the supermarket is organized, even a simple day feels very long. I was not unhappy exactly, but I was not settled either. I was like a plant that has been moved from one pot to another, and the roots have not yet decided whether this new soil is safe. Arjun did everything he could to make me comfortable. On weekends, he took me to the Indian grocery store so I could buy the things I needed to cook properly. He installed a small radio in my room so I could listen to Hindi music in the mornings. He found a temple not too far away and took me there on Sundays. He called me from work sometimes just to check if I needed anything. My son is a good man. I want to make that very clear. He loves me, and he tried hard. But Arjun was not home most of the time. And Ashley was. Let me tell you about a pattern I started to notice. I do not use the word pattern lightly. I am not a woman who likes to accuse people without good reason. But when you live in the same house as someone, day after day, week after week, you begin to see things that a visitor would never see. You see the real person, not the performance. And what I saw was this. Ashley had 2 versions of herself. There was the Ashley that existed when Arjun was in the room, and there was the Ashley that existed when he was not. The Ashley when Arjun was home was warm. She would sit with me at the dinner table and ask me questions about my life. She would say things like, "Kamala Auntie, tell Arjun about that story you told me earlier. It's so interesting." Even when I had told her no such story, because we had barely spoken all day, she would refill my glass. She would laugh at things I said. She would touch my arm gently when I was talking, the way affectionate daughters-in-law do. Once she even told Arjun, right in front of me, "Your mother is so strong, I really admire her." And Arjun looked so happy when she said that. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I did not say anything. I just smiled. Because the Ashley when Arjun was not home was a different person entirely. She did not yell at me. She did not insult me. She did not do anything that I could walk up to Arjun and describe in clear, simple words. That is the thing I want you to understand, because this is what makes this kind of situation so difficult to explain to other people. She was not cruel in an obvious way. She was cruel in a quiet way. She was cruel through absence, through coldness, through the specific kind of politeness you use with someone you wish was not there. I will give you some examples, because I think examples are the only way to make you truly understand what I mean. One morning, about 6 weeks after I arrived, I came to the kitchen and found Ashley eating breakfast. Just the two of us. She had made eggs and toast for herself. When I came in, she looked up, said, "Morning," and looked back down at her phone. I went to the refrigerator. I noticed there was only a little bit of milk left, not enough for both of us to have our morning things. I said, "Ashley, I think we are running low on milk." She said, "I'll add it to the list," without looking up. She did not offer to share what she had. She did not ask if I had enough for my chai. She just went back to her phone. Now, I know what you are thinking. That is a small thing, Kamala. That is nothing. And alone, yes, it is nothing. But that is what I am trying to tell you. It was never one big thing. It was always small things, one after another, every day adding up. She never included me in her plans, but she was careful to only make plans when Arjun was not watching. One Saturday morning, Arjun was home, and Ashley announced at breakfast that she and her friend were going to the mall that afternoon. "Do you want to come, Kamala Auntie?" she asked, smiling. I said, "No, thank you." I was tired. Arjun looked pleased that she had asked, but the following Saturday, when Arjun was at his friend's house for the afternoon, Ashley went to the mall again. She mentioned it as she was putting on her coat. "I'm heading out. See you later." Just like that. No invitation. She did not even tell me when she expected to be back, which meant I did not know whether to cook dinner for two or just for myself. I cooked for two. She came home having already eaten. I put her plate in the fridge, and I did not say a word. There was also the matter of the kitchen, which became a source of stress that I had not anticipated. I love to cook. Cooking is how I feel useful, how I feel at home, how I express love. In India, I cooked for my whole family, for my husband, for Arjun when he was growing up, for neighbors and relatives who came to visit. The kitchen was my kingdom. Here, in this house, the kitchen was Ashley's territory, and she had not invited me in as an equal. She never said anything directly. But when I cooked, when I made dal or sabzi or rice, she would come into the kitchen and open windows without comment, as if the smell needed to be removed. Once I heard her on the phone with her friend in the next room, and I could not understand every word, but I heard her say, "Very strong smell," and then she laughed. I could not be certain she was talking about my cooking, but something in my stomach told me she was. I said nothing. I kept cooking, but I started to feel self-conscious in that kitchen for the first time in my life. I am 71 years old, and I am standing in a kitchen feeling self-conscious about making dal. Do you understand how strange that is? How wrong? The hardest moments, I think, were the evenings when Arjun worked late. Those evenings stretched out like rubber, long and slow and uncomfortable. Ashley and I would be in the same house, sometimes in the same room, and there was a silence between us that was not the comfortable silence of two people who know each other well. It was the stiff silence of two strangers stuck together in a waiting room. She watched her shows on the television in the living room. I sat in my room. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I just sat. Sometimes I called my friend Meena back in Pune, and we talked for a long time, and I felt better. And then I hung up the phone and looked around my nice clean room in my son's house in America, and I felt the loneliness settle back over me like a shawl. I want to tell you about one evening in particular, because it is the evening when I stopped telling myself I was imagining things. It was a Thursday. Arjun was late. Ashley and I were having dinner. I had cooked, as I often did, because cooking gave me something to do. We were sitting at the table, and I tried to make conversation. I asked her about her work, because I knew she was doing some kind of big project. She answered in short sentences. Fine, busy, almost done. I asked about her family in Ohio, her mother, whom I had heard about but never met. She said her mother was fine. I said, maybe one day she will visit and I can meet her. Ashley looked at me then, and she had that expression again. The one I had seen the very first week, the one that lasted only a second before the polite mask came back. This time, I think she was trying to imagine it. Her mother here, and me here, and all of us together. And something about that image was clearly not appealing to her. Maybe, she said, and then she looked back at her food. I finished my dinner. I washed my plate. I went to my room. That night, lying in bed, I stopped making excuses for her. I stopped telling myself I was too sensitive, that I was old-fashioned, that I did not understand American ways, that she was just busy, just tired, just reserved. I stopped all of that. I let myself see clearly what had been in front of me for weeks. Ashley did not want me there. She had agreed to have me because she loved her husband and she knew how much it meant to him. She had agreed, and she was managing it. But she had not made peace with it, and she had decided, maybe without even realizing she had decided, that she would not let Arjun see her feelings. She would perform warmth when he was watching, and when he was not watching, she would be what she actually was, a woman in her own home who had never signed up to share it with her husband's mother, and who was quietly, politely, every single day, making sure I knew it. That was the pattern. And once I saw it, I could not unsee it. The question now was, what was I going to do about it? I am 71 years old. I have learned that there are problems you can solve by speaking, and problems you can make much worse by speaking. I needed to think. I needed to be careful. Because the one thing I was certain of was this. I was not going to lose my son over this. Whatever happened, I would not put Arjun in the middle. I owed him that much. But I also owed myself something, and I was only beginning to understand what that was. There is a saying in Marathi that my mother used to repeat to me when I was a young girl. It means, roughly, the truth does not stay buried forever. Sooner or later it finds its way to the surface, like water finding a crack in the ground. My mother was a wise woman. She was right about many things. She was right about that. By the 3rd month of living in that house, I had become very good at being invisible. I want you to understand what I mean by that, because it sounds sad when I say it like that. And in some ways it was sad, but it was also a choice I made with open eyes. I had decided not to confront Ashley directly. I had decided not to speak to Arjun about what I was observing, because I was afraid of what that conversation might do to his marriage, to his happiness, to the image he had of his wife. So instead, I made myself small. I stayed in my room more than I needed to. I timed my trips to the kitchen to avoid being there when Ashley was there. I ate quietly, cleaned up after myself immediately, asked for nothing, made no complaints. I became a guest in my son's home, a very careful, very quiet, very undemanding guest, and I told myself this was fine. I told myself I was being mature. I told myself I was protecting my son, but I was also slowly disappearing, and a part of me knew that. My friend Meena, back in Pune, noticed before I did. One evening she called me, and after we talked for a while, she said, "Kamala, you don't sound like yourself." I told her I was fine, just adjusting. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You are shrinking yourself for other people again. You did that your whole life. You don't have to do it anymore." I did not respond to that. I changed the subject, but after I hung up, I sat with her words for a long time. She was not wrong. Now let me tell you about the day everything changed. It was a Saturday in October, about 3.5 months after I had arrived. The weather had turned cold, which was new to me. I had never lived through a real American autumn before, and the cold settled into my bones in a way that the cold in India never did. Arjun had gone to play cricket with some friends in the morning. Yes, there is an Indian cricket group near where they live. I was happy when I found that out, and he said he would be back by early afternoon. Ashley was home. She had been in a quiet, closed mood all morning. Not unfriendly, just very clearly preferring to be alone. I had made my breakfast, eaten in my room, and spent the morning reading and watching some videos on my phone. Around 11 o'clock, I decided to do something I had been putting off for weeks. I wanted to reorganize my suitcase, which I had never properly unpacked, and I needed some space on the floor of the hallway to do it. I dragged my suitcase out and began going through it quietly. I found some things I had brought for the house. Small gifts, really, things from India that I had thought might be nice. A set of hand-painted coasters, a box of good tea, a small framed print of a painting I had always loved, bright blues and yellows, something to hang on a wall somewhere. I was holding the framed print and thinking about where it might go when Ashley came into the hallway. She stopped when she saw my suitcase open on the floor and things spread out around me. Now, I want to be fair to her. A suitcase spread across the hallway is not ideal. I understand that, but I was planning to clean it all up, and it was a Saturday morning, and the hallway was wide enough to walk past. It was not a disaster, but Ashley looked at the suitcase, and then she looked at the framed print in my hands, and something in her face shifted. "What is that?" she asked. "A painting," I said. "I brought it from home. I thought perhaps it could go somewhere in the house." I held it out a little so she could see it better. "I thought the guest bathroom maybe, or the hallway here. We already have a style in the house," she said. Her voice was flat and even. "I spent a lot of time choosing everything. I don't really want to start adding things." I looked at her. I looked at the small framed print in my hands. It was not even very big. It was the size of a piece of paper. "Of course," I said. "I understand." I put the print down on top of my suitcase. Ashley stood there for another moment. And this is the part I have replayed in my mind many times since then, because I think this is the moment when something in her loosened, something she had been holding very tightly for a long time, and it came out before she could stop it. "You know," she said, and her voice was still even, still controlled, but there was something underneath it, something with an edge. "This is really hard for me too, having someone else in the house all the time, someone who is always here." I did not say anything. I waited. "Arjun just decided you were coming, and I went along with it because I love him. But this is my home, too, and I feel like I don't have my home to myself anymore. I don't have my kitchen. I don't have my evenings. I don't have—" She stopped. She pressed her lips together. She looked at the ceiling for a second. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." But she had said it, and it was out there now, between us, filling the hallway. And here is the thing, friend. Here is the part that might surprise you. I was not angry. I expected to be angry, but I was not. What I felt was closer to relief, because the pretending was over. The performance was finished. Whatever happened next, at least we were finally being honest. "You are right," I said. "You should not have had to just go along with it. That was not fair." She looked at me then, and I could see she had not expected me to say that. She had prepared herself for a fight or for tears. She had not prepared herself for agreement. "Sit down," I said. I gestured to the couch at the end of the hallway. We had a small sitting area there. "Please, let us talk like two people." She sat. I sat across from her. I put my hands in my lap, and I looked at her. This young woman, maybe 32 years old, blonde hair pulled back, blue eyes with shadows under them, a woman who was clearly carrying something heavy, and I thought about what to say. I decided to say the truth. "I know you treat me differently when Arjun is here," I said, not unkindly, just clearly. "I have known for a long time. I want you to know that I understand why. You love your husband. You do not want him to see that you are struggling. I respect that. I have done the same thing in my own life. Many times, kept a smile for other people that I did not feel on the inside." She was very still. "But I want to ask you something, Ashley. Not to accuse you, just to understand." I paused. "What is it that you are afraid of? Because I think underneath everything, there is a fear somewhere, and I would like to know what it is." She was quiet for a long time, long enough that I was not sure she was going to answer. Then she said softly, "I'm afraid that you are more important to him than I am." I sat with that for a moment. Such a simple sentence, such a big fear inside it. "He lived here before you came," she continued. "It was just us, and things were good. And then you arrived, and now he spends his weekends driving you to the temple and the grocery store, and he calls you from work and asks about you, and I can see how happy he is when he is with you, and I—" She stopped again. I feel like I got smaller. "Ashley," I said, and I said it gently, because she was not a villain sitting in front of me. She was a young woman who was afraid. A husband loving his mother does not mean he loves his wife less. That is not how love works. Love is not a pot of rice that runs out. It does not divide. It multiplies. She looked at me with wet eyes. And I want to tell you something else, I said. I did not come here to take anything from you. I came here because my son asked me to come, and I was lonely and old and far from everything I knew. I am the one who gave up everything to come here. I am not trying to reclaim him. I am trying not to disappear. There was a long silence. Then Ashley did something I had not expected. She put her face in her hands, and she cried. Not a little. She really cried. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep, the kind that has been waiting a long time for permission. I sat across from her, and I let her cry. I did not rush to comfort her or to make it stop. I just let her feel what she felt. When she looked up, her eyes were red, and her face was a mess, and she looked, honestly, much more real to me than she ever had before. I owe you an apology, she said. Maybe we owe each other some honesty, I said. That is more useful than an apology. We sat there together for a long time after that, talking, slowly at first, carefully. The way you test ice before you walk on it. She told me more about her fears. I told her more about my loneliness. She told me she had never had a close relationship with her own grandmother, that she did not know how to do this, that she was not taught what it looked like to have an older woman in the home. I told her that I had not known how to live in someone else's kitchen, that I had been shrinking myself, and I was tired of it. When Arjun came home that afternoon, he found us in the kitchen together. I was teaching Ashley how to make chai, properly, the way my mother taught me, with ginger and cardamom and just the right amount of sugar. She was watching my hands and asking questions. There was a smell in the kitchen that was warm and familiar to me and new to her, and the windows were not open. Arjun stood in the doorway and looked at us for a moment with an expression on his face that I will never forget for as long as I live. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. He did not know what had happened that morning. He did not know about the suitcase in the hallway, the framed print, the tears, the long conversation. He just saw his mother and his wife standing together in the kitchen, and he thought everything was fine. The difference was, this time, it actually was. They say the hardest conversations are the ones that change everything. I believe that now in a way I did not before that Saturday in October. Because after that morning in the hallway, after the tears and the chai and Arjun standing in the doorway with that look on his face, something in the house shifted. Not all at once, not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies, where one conversation fixes everything and people hug and music plays and life becomes simple. Real life does not work like that. Real healing is slow. It moves the way a plant grows. You cannot see it happening, but one day you look and something is taller than it was before. The first thing I noticed in the days after that conversation was the silence. It changed. I know that sounds strange, so let me explain. Before, the silence between Ashley and me was a cold silence. It was the silence of two people avoiding each other, each waiting for the other to go away. After that Saturday, the silence became something different. It became a quiet silence, a silence that was not uncomfortable. We could sit in the same room without needing to perform anything, and that was new, and it was good. She did not become a different person overnight. I want to be clear about that. She was still reserved. She still kept mostly to herself during her workday. She still had habits and preferences and a way of running her home that was hers, not mine. None of that changed, but the coldness was gone. And when the coldness is gone, everything else becomes manageable. Small things began to happen. One morning, about a week after our conversation, I came to the kitchen and found 2 cups already on the counter and the milk already heating on the stove. Ashley was sitting at the table with her laptop. She looked up and said, "I figured you'd be making chai." I started the milk. Just like that. Casual. Simple. Like it was nothing. It was not nothing. Another time, she knocked on my bedroom door in the evening and asked if I wanted to watch something on television with her. She said her friend had recommended a show about a family in India, a drama, very popular, and she thought maybe I could watch it with her and tell her if it was accurate. I came out of my room and we sat on the couch together, and I spent half the show laughing at how wrong some things were and the other half explaining what was actually true. And Ashley listened and asked questions and laughed when I laughed. It was the first time we had laughed together without Arjun in the room. It felt like crossing a bridge I had not known was being built. Arjun noticed the change, of course. Arjun is a perceptive man. He had always been, even as a little boy. But he is also a man who very much wants peace in his home. And I think for a long time, he had sensed a tension without wanting to look directly at it. Now that the tension was lifting, he relaxed in a way I had not seen since I arrived. He became lighter. He laughed more at the dinner table. He started coming home a little earlier some evenings. One night he said to me, when Ashley had stepped out of the room, "Ma, I don't know what happened, but you and Ashley seem different. Better." I just smiled and told him that sometimes two people need time to understand each other. He nodded like that made sense, and he did not ask more questions. I did not tell him about the hallway conversation. Ashley and I never discussed it, but I think we both understood, without saying so, that what happened that morning belonged to us. It was our thing, the beginning of something that was ours alone, separate from Arjun, separate from the roles we played as mother and wife in his life. And that was important, I think. That was actually very important. Because the problem had never really been about Arjun. It had been about two women who had never learned to see each other clearly, and that had to be solved between the two women, not through the man in the middle. I will tell you about one more moment, because it is the one that stays with me most. It was a Sunday, about 6 weeks after our conversation in the hallway. Arjun was at the temple with some friends. I had not gone that week because my knees were bothering me a little from the cold. Ashley and I were at home together. She had been quiet all morning, and I could see something was on her mind. Around noon, she came and sat across from me in the living room and said, "My mother is coming to visit next month, for a week." "That is wonderful," I said. She looked at her hands. "I want to warn you. She is not the easiest person. She has strong opinions. She might say things that are not." She paused. "She has never really known anyone from India before. I don't want you to think that I feel the way she might sometimes seem to feel." I looked at her carefully. Here was this young woman warning me about her own mother, trying to protect me from something before it happened. Trying to prepare me the way you prepare someone you care about. "Thank you," I said, "for telling me." She nodded. She looked relieved. "Ashley," I said, "can I tell you something?" "Yes. I have been thinking about what you said that morning, about feeling like you got smaller when I arrived. I understand that feeling better than you might think. Do you know what it is like to leave your whole country, everything you have ever known, at the age of 71, because you were afraid of being alone? I felt invisible for most of my first months here, not because of you only, because everything was unfamiliar, because I did not know how to be in this new life. We were both becoming invisible to each other. That is the truth." She listened. "But I want to tell you something my husband used to say. He said that the people who cause you the most difficulty are usually the people who are most worth understanding. I think he was right. You were not easy for me. I hope I was not too easy for you either." I smiled a little. "And look at us now." She smiled back. A real smile, the kind I had not seen from her before. Not the wide, performed smile she used when Arjun was watching, but a smaller, quieter, more honest one. The smile of someone who is not trying to impress you, who is just sitting with you. Her mother came the following month. Her name was Diane, and Ashley had not been wrong. She was a woman with very firm opinions about everything, delivered without much concern for how they landed. She looked at my saris with unconcealed curiosity. She asked me questions that were a little clumsy, questions that showed she had not spent much time around people from other places. Once she said, about the chai I had made for everyone, "I don't usually like foreign food, but this is actually pretty good." I thanked her very warmly. Ashley, watching from the other side of the kitchen, caught my eye, and she gave me a look, just a quick look, shared between us, that said, "I know, I see it. I'm sorry. Thank you for being gracious." I gave her a small nod back. That was a language Arjun could not have translated for either of us. It was a language we had built ourselves, slowly, out of honesty and difficulty, and chai made with ginger and cardamom. It was ours. Now, I want to come to the end of this story, and I want to end it honestly, the way I began it. Because this is not a story where everything became perfect. My life in America is still not easy. I still miss Pune. I still miss the sound of my old street in the morning, my friends, my temple there, the smell of the rain on hot pavement in June. I still have days when the loneliness finds me, when I sit in my nice clean room and feel the distance between here and everything I used to be. And Ashley and I are not best friends. We are not the kind of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law you see in sentimental stories, always hugging, always understanding each other perfectly, always happy in the same room. We are two very different women from two very different worlds, and we will probably always have moments of friction, moments of misunderstanding, moments where the gap between us is visible. But we are honest with each other now, and I have lived long enough to know that honesty between two people is worth more than all the performed warmth in the world. Last month something happened that I keep thinking about. I was in the kitchen making dinner, a proper Indian dinner, dal and rice and some vegetables with mustard seeds and curry leaves, the kitchen smelling exactly the way my mother's kitchen used to smell. And Ashley came home from a walk. She came into the kitchen, put her bag down, and stood next to me for a moment. She looked at the pots on the stove. "That smells incredible," she said. And she meant it. I could hear that she meant it. "Sit," I told her. "I will teach you how to do the dal. It is not difficult. You just have to know the order." She sat down at the kitchen table. She got out her phone to take notes. That is a very American thing, I think, taking notes on a phone. And she said, "Okay, I'm ready." I looked at this young woman sitting in her kitchen, in her home, ready to learn something from me. And I thought about the woman who had arrived at this airport 10 months ago, carrying 2 suitcases and a bag of spices and a heart full of hope that was also a heart full of fear. I thought about how many evenings I had spent alone in my room, making myself invisible. I thought about the framed print that was still in my suitcase. I had put it back without hanging it up that day in the hallway, and it had stayed there. After dinner that evening, I went and got the print. I brought it to the living room where Ashley was sitting, and I held it out. "I would still like to put this somewhere," I said, "if that is all right with you." She looked at it for a moment, the bright blues and yellows, the painting from home. Then she stood up and walked around the room slowly, looking at the walls, thinking. She stopped near the window, by the small table where she kept a plant. "Here," she said, "I think it would look beautiful here." I hung it the next morning, and every time I walk past it now, I think of my mother and my old house and the journey that brought me here. And I think that sometimes the hardest landings are the ones that eventually feel most like home, not because the place changes, but because the people in it finally decide to really see each other. And that, my friend, is the whole story.